Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Midlife Crisis, the show where I talk about all of the major DC crossover events in order. My name is Kay Chamberlain, and today we're going to be beginning our month-long look at DC 1 Million, a massive crossover event with a ton of tie-ins. It's only a 4-issue miniseries, but there's like 34 tie-ins to this, and I'm going to do the whole thing. But before I get into it and start explaining what this event is even about, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, press the like button, and hit the notification button so that you get notified for future episodes. So, DC 1 Million is an event written by Grant Morrison with art by Val Semeiks and Prentice Rollins, or Val Semeiks and Prentice Rollins. So, the idea of DC 1 Million is it takes place in the 853rd century, because that is the year that Grant Morrison calculated would be the year that Action Comics would release its 1 millionth issue. So the idea of this whole series is that all the tie-ins would be issue 1 million of their series, and that the writers would imagine what the series would have evolved to at that point in the 853rd century. There's not really a lot I can say because I'm going to be talking about it and explaining the whole story. Other than that, yeah, it's just a story all about, to summarize it, it's a story all about the Justice League teaming up with their future selves to fight a threat to the future. And we'll find out about more of it when I start explaining it. So, without further ado, let's get straight into DC 1 Million, Issue 1. So, the issue begins with Zuriel, who is an angel and a member of the JLA, and Plastic Man, who have just been, hanging out. Zuriel's supposed to be on, monitor duty, but Plastic Man convinced him to get away from the monitors so that they can just hang out, and when they return to the monitors, they find Martian Manhunter stating that, a lot of people have died, over 1 million people, and Zuriel's just like, crap, you turn your back, and Plastic Man's just like, you turn your back for 1 second. So, I think that's supposed to be kind of like a flash forward, and then we flash back to the present, so I'm pretty sure that takes place in the future. What we just saw is that, at some point, 1 million people will die on planet Earth. Which is funny because it's DC 1 million. But we go to the present where the Justice League have gathered together, which include Wonder Woman, Superman, Martian Manhunter, The Flash, Steel, Huntress, Plastic Man, Big Barda, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and Batman. I'm pretty sure that's everyone. And Superman explains that, and at the end of the most recent JLA issue, a group from the future, known as the Justice Legion A, showed up, who are all from the 853rd century, and they have all come to visit the Justice League for some reason. The Justice League are very skeptical of them because they don't know whether or not to believe that these people are, first of all, actually from the future, because recently they did fight a Justice League that was white Martians pretending to be, copies of them. So they don't even know if they can trust this Justice Legion. The members of the Justice Legion are Starman, Superman, Owlman, Wonder Woman, Batman, John Fox the Flash, who we are very acquainted with, we know him quite well, and Aquaman. Like, these are all future versions. We don't really know their identities outside of their superhero names. I don't know if we learn more about them yet, other than John Fox. But yeah, they show up at the Watchtower, and after some convincing... basically, they just have to convince the Justice League why they're here, and if they're here for good reasons. And they explain to the Justice League, or at least Owlman from the future and Starman from the future explain that Owlman has this technology in the future that allows him to have mastery over time, and he wants to use his powers to send the Justice League to the future so that they can take part in a massive celebration that they have in the 851st century, which is the return of the Prime Superman. So basically, in the 853rd century, all of the members of the Justice League have their own planets that they reside over and look after. And the Superman of present time still exists in the 853rd century. Clark Kent lives that long. And in the future, there was an enemy called Solaris. And the Prime Superman used all of his power to make Solaris docile to the point where he straight up died. And then he took refuge, like his dead body ended up in an artificial sun, and he's been in there for years, recuperating and coming back to life. And he's set to make his grand debut, his grand return in the future. And so they want the present Justice League to come to the future as part of the celebration, because they're inviting people from all different time eras, including this Justice League. And when they come to the future, basically all the Justice League has to do is that each of them will be sent to a different planet, and then they have to take part in a challenge, which will be a feat of strength or power. And then once they've done that, that's it. They'll be coming back to their own time. And because of the way time works, to them, they'll be gone for like a few days. But in reality, they'll only be gone for like a few seconds. And Superman is just like, wait a minute, what? I'm still alive in the future? And they're like, yep, you're still alive in the future. I don't know how I feel about that. I think my idea with like Clark and Lois and stuff is like, well, if Clark lives until the 853rd century, that means he outlives Lois and all of his friends. And I don't like the idea of that. I prefer the idea of Superman actually growing, being able to grow older, and eventually dying of old age with his friends and family. Like, that just feels like a much more, like, an ending that Superman would deserve, you know? So Nightwing, we cut to Nightwing. He's doing stuff in Bloodhaven. We're setting up a tie-in. The original Starman is talking to Jay about, like, Jay Garrick about, you know, how he used to be a superhero and stuff. And at the same time that he's talking, the Starman from the future, he sees him on the TV. Later on, Kyle will be talking to this future Starman, and this future Starman will express wanting to go and meet the current Starman that lives in Opal City. So we'll probably see that in a tie-in. A bunch of the members of the Justice League decide that they're going to go. Some of them decide that they're not going to go. Basically, the only members of the Justice League that end up going to the future are the main six. So we got Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, and Aquaman. They're all the ones that go to the future. Everyone else stays behind. Martian Manhunter decides to stay behind because he wants to look after, like, he wants to watch over Plastic Man, Huntress, Big Barda, and Steel, and Zuriel. Meanwhile, Huntress is having some disputes with Batman because the reason she's on the team is because she's replacing Green Arrow. And she's like, why am I on the team? Other than replacing Green Arrow, why did you pick me and not Nightwing? And because Batman is such a tease, he just doesn't tell her. Because he's a bit of a dick. He doesn't tell her. He ends up going into the Batcave and he just shuts the door on her. And she's just kind of like, okay, you're not going to tell me. fine. He heads into the Batcave and he meets up with the future version of Batman, and Batman's just like, "How do you know I can trust you? How am I supposed to trust you?" And the future Batman's like, "I don't expect you to, but I'm gonna knock the crap out of you because I have martial arts abilities that were taught to me by telepathic dolphins in the future. So my martial arts are both physical and telepathic. So before you even realize that I'm saying a really long sentence," he literally says this. He's like, "Before you realize that I'm saying a really long sentence right now, I will have knocked you out." And he just kicks Batman in the chest, knocks him out, and then uses his device to suck Batman's like spirit into it. Like, he just sucks Batman into this little device and then heads off because he knew Batman wasn't going to agree to come with them, so he's forcing Batman into this. Wonder Woman reveals to Steel that she has an invisible jet now, because I'm pretty sure after Crisis on Infinite Earths, they retconned Wonder Woman having the invisible jet, and so now she's finally gotten it in present continuity. And the origins of the invisible jet was different. I'm not even going to go into it. But she has an invisible jet now. The heroes are all meeting on top of Mount Rushmore. The only ones who aren't there yet are the Superman. The Superman from the future tells our Superman that it's very common for the Supermen of different eras to meet up. There's like a council of Supermen in the future. They all team up and they all like get together and have lunch and stuff like regularly. And that it was Clark who inspired it. So Clark and future Superman are dealing with a bunch of rioters. And that's when the future Superman reveals that every super person in the future, like every super person, like Superman, Superwoman and stuff, they all have like extra powers because basically the Superman of the 67th century married Gesint Plazuk, the queen of the fifth dimension, and upon doing so it became a part of like the regular bloodline of Superman that they had extra powers like ESP. So he uses his ESP powers to stop all the rioters by making the raindrops like enter their brains and like hypnotize them. So yeah, he explains that to Superman. Meanwhile, another plotline that happens is Aqualad, Red Arrow, like Roy, Supergirl, and Jesse Quick are all watching a auction that's going on, like a gang auction in Mongolia. Basically, they're selling off rocket reds and nuclear weapons, and Vandal Savage is there because he wants them. So Vandal Savage decides to disrupt the auction by blowing up a nearby helicopter and like to distract everyone. And so Roy, Jesse Quick, and I'm just going to call them the Titans because that's kind of what they are at the moment. The Titans decide to take action, and Vandal Savage takes out Jesse Quick by using a device that makes a frequency that only speedsters can hear. So it pierces her ears and she's just like, ah, and falls to the ground. He then catches Roy's arrow and throws it at Supergirl, who is trying to sneak up from him from behind. And then he electrocutes Aqualad by grabbing a cable and electrocutes him because he's like, water conducts electricity, so electricity is your weakness. And then he grabs Roy by the throat and chokes him out. And then he tells his men, take them away. They're going to be my 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. We don't know what that means, but we're going to find out. So the Justice League are sent to the future. They meet on Mount Rushmore, and our man of the future uses his powers and sends them to the future. They're all wondering where Batman is, and the future Batman just like releases Batman from his little device straight into the time vortex, and the Justice League are all sent to the future. And we see a shot of the Batcave, so it's assumed that because they're all sent to separate planets. And we see Batman arrive in the Batcave, I guess. and it looks insane. And then Martian Manhunter is like, alright, so they've been gone for a few seconds, which means their challenges must have finished. Bring him back, Owlman. And Owlman starts speaking a bunch of gibberish, and then he starts going crazy, and then he explodes into a bunch of, like, green gas. And it turns out that in the future, there is a massive virus that has killed a lot of people, and it starts with, from what I'm gathering, it starts with Owlman, where Owlman has been infected by this virus, and now he's released it, and everyone around him, like Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman of the future, they've all become infected with this virus. So Oracle is like, I'm going to shut down the Watchtower so that this virus doesn't get out there, and like, we got to stop this from spreading. And then we find in the far future of 85,271 on Mars, Vandal Savage is toasting with a wine, and he says that he's going to use, like, somebody is talking to him that says, like, and is like, very shortly your ultimate weapon, the Night Fragment, will be unearthed from beneath the Martian desert, just in time to celebrate the return of the Prime Superman. And basically, Vandal Savage is teaming up with Solaris, because it turns out in the future, Solaris eventually becomes evil again and is no longer docile, and Solaris's plan is to kill Superman when he returns in the future, and then take over as the son of the future, as the artificial son of the future, like, take over it, and basically take control of the future, and Vandal Savage and Solaris are going to rule the future. And so it ends with Vandal and Solaris together, and Vandal is like, good to have you back, and thinking big, Solaris. The JLA are lambs to the slaughter. Let the games begin. And so that's the end of issue 1 of DC 1 Million. Big issue, a lot happened. Yeah, so with all the pieces are set, Vandal Savage and Solaris, a virus has been set free and is apparently going to infect the future immensely, killing a lot of people. And the Justice League have been sent to the future, so they're not in the present to help with the virus. Instead, it's up to Steel and Huntress and everyone else that was left to try and deal with this. Yeah, we'll find out what happens when we get to the next issue of DC 1 Million. But until then, we got some tie-ins to check out. And the first tie-in that we're going to be talking about is Action Comics issue 1 Million. Written by Mark Schultz, with art by Ron Lim and Jose Marzan Jr. So let's check it out and see what happens when Superman ends up in the far futuristic version of Metropolis in the 853rd century. Okay, Action Comics 1 Million begins with Superman arriving in the futuristic Metropolis, where he sees a statue of himself. So he comes to the conclusion that his descendants must have left a pretty good legacy for him to have a statue in his honor. Even though he has a statue of himself in Metropolis in the present day, so it shouldn't be that surprising to him. And then he meets Luthor and Jarada Olsen, descendants of Lex Luthor and Jimmy Olsen. It's really funny because you know how like Jimmy Olsen became Turtle Boy in like a comic book? That has become the symbol of his descendants. Like, they have a turtle shell symbol on their jackets, and everyone that is a member of the Olsen family wears it. Jarada is actually the mayor of Metropolis, and they've come to greet Superman and bring him to the arena for his challenge. So they head into what is called a Tesseract, which is a little pocket, like, dimension. So basically, every single part of each planet, like, is kept in what is called a Tesseract, which is a pocket dimension. So in order to travel to different locations, you enter a Tesseract and you just enter that place. So they go into the Tesseract and they end up in the arena. So it's all like split up into separate spaces of their own. In the arena, Superman's challenge is to fight these Geometrons, which are these things made out of bizarro technology is what they call it, and they have the ability to shape and morph to adapt to Superman's powers, so the more he destroys, the harder they're going to get. So he starts fighting them and destroying them, and then Solaris shows up and is like, I'm going to mess with Superman's challenge and make him look evil and bad and turn everyone against him. So the first thing he does is he alters Superman's brain using this thing called headset. So basically there's this thing in the future that is called, headnet. It's this thing that's broadcasted into people's brains in the future. It's broadcasted into Superman's brain as well. And Solaris changes headnet so that it messes with Superman's brain. And he forces Superman to throw the Geometron so fast that it smashes into the crowd, hurting a bunch of people. And Superman's just like, whoa, like, how did I throw it that hard? I wasn't trying to throw it that hard. And so Superman tries using his heat vision, and Solaris deflects it into the crowd, and that's when the crowd is like, he's trying to hurt us! He must be a Bizarro unit sent from the present to the future to trick us into thinking he was Superman. You betrayed us! And so the crowd starts trying to kill Superman, and so he runs away and flies off, and Solaris is like, I've succeeded in ruining your challenge. You are now a fugitive in the future. All the vigilantes in the future are trying to kill you. And so Superman flies off and ends up confronting a bunch of the citizens, and in the future it's normal for everyone to have superpowers. And not just any superpowers, but the powers of heroes from the present. So there's this guy named Captain Metamorph, who has the powers of Shazam and Metamorpho. Superman fights him and manages to defeat him. And then he fights this woman named Gorilla Queen, or Negative Gorilla Queen. So she's like Negative Man mixed with Gorilla Grodd. And he beats her, and then he fights Green Infection and defeats her. It's like Green Lantern, something else, I don't know. And then as he's flying away from the citizens who are chasing after him, he comes in contact with the Hawkman of the future and his squad. And this Hawkman is known as... what's his name? Mahal Taj. So he's the Hawkman of the future. They capture Superman in this net that sucks out his energy, but Superman manages to convince them to try and trust him because he knows Kadar Hol, who is a legendary Thanagarian in the future. And so Mahal Taj is like, alright, we'll take you to the one person who will be able to confirm if you're the real Superman or not, and that way we'll know if we can trust you. So they take Superman to this place known as the Junkyard, which is just a cave with scrapped robots, and he meets this person that they're referring to, and it's Platinum, a member of the Metal Men, the woman on the Metal Men. And so it turns out that the Metal Men were so well built that they lived all the way until the 853rd century, but as time went on, each of them started to malfunction. And now Platinum is the only one that's working now, and the others are all kept in isolation. But she confirms that this is the real Superman. And Superman is like, alright, I'm going to need your help in order to find my friends and warn them about what's happening, because somebody messed with my challenge, and I'm guessing they're going to mess with their challenges as well. I need to get rid of this headnet thing, because it's messing with my head, and I can't think straight. And so Mahal Taj, was that his name? I keep forgetting his name because Mahal Taj. It's such a weird name. It's hard to remember. Mahal Taj takes Superman to where the headnet is, which is the relay complex, and Superman and Platinum team up together to cause it to malfunction so that he can think straight enough. And Mahal Taj is like, the relay complex is fixing itself, so you better get out of here right now before it fixes, while the headnet is out of your brain. So Superman says goodbye to Platinum. He heads through a Tesseract to the statue that he started, and he finds out that there's a Tesseract in the statue, in the Superman statue, and he heads into it, and he ends up in the Arctic, and he comes to the conclusion that the Fortress of Solitude is probably in the Arctic somewhere, and that's his best bet of finding a way to get to the other planets where the other Justice League members are and warn them about what's happening. But we end on this cliffhanger. Is Clark Kent going to find the Fortress of Solitude in the future? We're going to have to find out in his next tie-in, which is Adventures of Superman 1,000,000. But that's not the next tie-in that we're reading yet. We're going to have to wait a bit before we get to that one, because I'm reading this in the order that the omnibus comes in. It's funny, I looked up the reading order for DC 1,000,000, and there's like 3 different reading orders. And one of the reading orders starts off with Kronos 1,000,000. But I'm just reading the omnibus in the order that it was printed in, because usually omnibuses are printed in like a comprehensible reading order, especially events. So that's just how I'm going to do it. I'm not going to try and flick through the omnibus and read it specifically in the order that, is stated on websites, because that would take forever. But yeah, the next one in the omnibus that we're going to be reading is Shadow of the Bat 1,000,000. This one should like, that last time was pretty good. I enjoyed it. This one will be probably good because it's written by Alan Grant, who is a great Batman writer, with art by Mark Buckingham, who I like Mark Buckingham's art, and Wayne Faucher. So yeah, let's get straight into Shadow of the Bat 1,000,000, a never-ending story. So Shadow of the Bat 1,000,000 can be a little bit confusing at first, the ending of it, but I managed to wrap my head around it, and I'm pretty sure I have a good idea on what's going on. So the Batman of the future from 853rd century is currently stuck in present-day Gotham, while Bruce Wayne Batman is stuck in the future after Owlman blew up, sending the Justice League to the future, but because he blew up, they can't come back. And Owlman let out this virus that they're referring to as the Owlman virus, which is starting to plague the present and will eventually take over the entire planet, infecting the future as well. And so the future Batman is attempting to find a way to stop this virus. In order to do so, he wants to find the Batcave so that he can see if Bruce Wayne has any technology that would help him come up with a way to stop the virus. So because he is Batman, this future Batman is taking down criminals, and the Gotham police notify this, and because he's not the Batman that they know, they want to bring him in for questioning because they don't trust him. Jim Gordon is actually infected with the virus, and the virus is partly making him a little bit more suspicious, paranoid, so it's kind of like controlling his thoughts. So future Batman breaks into Wayne Corporation's files, and he finds the identity of Batman, or he figures out that it's Bruce Wayne, and that this may help him find out how to stop the virus now that he knows who Batman is. And that's when the security guards try to attack him. So future Batman jumps out of the window and jumps on a motorcycle and then rides it away. There's just a motorcycle outside. I think it's his motorcycle. He jumps onto it and rides it away. And that's when Detective Montoya shows up and gets into a car chase with him. And future Batman loses them in an alleyway. And that's when he comes into conflict with Jim Gordon, who tries to talk down the future Batman. But future Batman jumps over him and stops a criminal from killing a couple that he's holding hostage. So yeah, future Batman stops them. And he gets into a conversation with Commissioner Gordon. Commissioner Gordon has him at gunpoint. And future Batman convinces Commissioner Gordon not to shoot him, because he's like, you're a good person. He's like, you're a good person. you know I'm a good person because I stopped that criminal. You know I'm not evil. So why are you trying to take me in? And Commissioner Gordon's like, stop, I'll shoot. And Future Batman just keeps walking away from him. Commissioner Gordon's like, get back here, like, I'll shoot you right now. I can't do it. And he just hangs his head in shame, and he's like, I can't do it. I can't shoot him. And so Future Batman heads off to continue searching for a cure for the virus, which I think will lead into Nightwing 1 million, which I think is the tie-in that we're going to be reading next. But before that, Future Batman also goes over his origin for us. So this whole time, he's been recording a tape for a character known as Zorox. Or Zoron. Not Zorox. Zoron. So Zoron is essentially the future version of the Joker. He's like if you take the Joker and Man-Bat and fuse them together, but he looks like Man-Bat, but he acts like the Joker, that's Zoron. So in the future, Zoron released a virus that was called like the Laughing Virus, which killed a lot of people. And then he used the commotion that was going on because of the virus to break out a bunch of criminals who then killed a lot of guards and stuff and laid siege over Gotham City, killing a lot of people. Like, he just gathered a bunch of people in Gotham and slaughtered them because he's so evil. And the future Batman, whose name we don't know, was there when it happened. So yeah, the future Batman was there, he saw all the slaughter, and he became Batman because of it, because this event scarred him, and he wanted to take down Zoron for everything that he did. So he became Batman in the 853rd century. And so it turns out that this tape, like Zoron has been listening to it in the future, this tape that future Batman has been recording, and it leads... So now we're in the future. We're in the future, by the way. The end of the comic takes place in the future. We are now in the future. Zoran is listening to the tape, and this leads future Batman to him in the future. So eventually future Batman will get back to his own time and be led straight to Zoron's lair, where he beats up all of Zoron's guys. One of them kind of looks like Bane. One of them is like Two-Face, but half of him is a robot instead of like a mutant. Like, instead of being like mutated. And he locks them all up in Tesseract space. He shoots a Tesseract at them and locks them away in their own little dimension. And that's it. And it's the end of the tie-in. So in the present, future Batman heads off to continue searching for a cure for the virus. And in the future, we know that future Batman will make it back to the 851st century, where he defeats his arch nemesis, Zoron. And so yeah, that's the end of Shadow of the Bat, issue 1 million. I enjoyed it, but the ending was quite confusing when we suddenly switched to it being taking place in the future. Yeah. Not a great idea to do that, Alan, but at least I was able to make sense of it. So the next issue we're going to be talking about is Nightwing 1 million, which takes place immediately after Shadow of the Bat 1 million. They are directly connected. It's written by Chuck Dixon, with art by Scott McDaniel, who is a well-known Nightwing artist, very popular, and Carl Story. So yeah, let's get straight into it and see what Nightwing gets up to during this event. So Nightwing 1 million was actually a pretty fast read, and I don't think it's going to take very long to explain everything in this, because not a lot really happens. The Anachronism is the name of the story. So Nightwing 1 million begins with Nightwing meeting the Batman of the future, whose name we don't know, and immediately he decides to start fighting Nightwing because he says that he studied the masked people of Nightwing's era, and they would often challenge one another in fights, and obviously what future Batman is doing is he's mistaking our time for, like, cowboy times when they would duel each other. So Nightwing's just like, you're thinking about the wrong time, man. So future Batman is throwing all these, like, technological batarangs at Nightwing, and one of them almost hits him, but it goes straight through him. And so Nightwing's like, wow, like, that thing, I thought it was going to kill me, but it didn't. And the Batman of the future is like, oh no, like, I wasn't trying to kill you. What the Batarang did is it grafted your DNA, so now I can track you whenever I want. And Nightwing's just cool with that. Like, Dick is just like, alright. And then it just kind of becomes just a regular Nightwing issue for a while, except future Batman is there. Basically, for most of the story, they go after these characters called Query and Echo, who normally work for the Riddler, and this time they're joined by somebody called Sly Fox, who is just a dude with a mask and guns. He's kind of like Red Hood. And they're trying to get a safe out of the ground. And so Nightwing and future Batman show up and start attacking them. And Query gets into a nearby crane and pulls the safe out of the ground, which causes Sly Fox and Echo to fall off of the safe. And then future Batman creates a bunch of copies, and Echo and Sly Fox try to fight off the copies, and eventually future Batman just knocks their heads together, knocking them both out. Meanwhile, Nightwing goes after the safe and Query's crane, and eventually unhooks the safe from the crane, causing it to collapse into the harbor. And so Query loses the safe, which really pisses her off. She's like, now nobody's gonna get the cash. And Nightwing's just like, that's the general plan, sweetie. She's like, I'm no sweetie. And he's like, I've noticed. And then he kicks her out of the crane. And, yeah, kicks the shit out of her. And then ties all three of them up. And future Batman's just like, what are we gonna do with them now? And Nightwing's just like, I'm gonna leave them there and I'll 911 the police. And future Batman has no idea what 911 is, or, like, what, like, calling the police is, because apparently you don't call people in the future, and 911 doesn't exist in the future. And then after that, they talk about the virus. Future Batman explains to Nightwing what the virus is, and Nightwing is like, well, are we gonna go around and, like, just grab as many people as we can who could be infected and get them to safety? And the Batman is like, future Batman is just like, we don't have time for that. Like, while we save one person, 10,000 people are at risk of dying of the virus. Our best way of doing this is by finding a cure. And so Nightwing is like, alright, I'll take you to the Batcave, where you can use the Batcomputer to figure out how to make a cure. So let's go. But I'm going to need a vehicle in order to help me get there, because getting to the Batcave is a little bit harder than usual, especially for me, because I can't fly like you can. Because it turns out future Batman can fly. He calls it, like, gravity-defying technology, but Nightwing's just like, you're flying, dude. And so he jumps into a boat and goes, like, he and future Batman head off to the Batcave, and that's it. That's the whole tie-in. Like I said, not really a lot happens in this one. Most of it is just a Nightwing book, but future Batman just happens to be there. And the beginning is kind of cool, because you get to see Nightwing and future Batman fight each other, but, like, it's not even really a proper fight. Overall, not bad. It wasn't as good as the Action Comics one. That one was the one that feels the most tied into the event, because it takes place in the future. So far, these other ones have just taken place in the present with a futuristic character, so they don't feel that different to the regular comics anyway. But the next tie-in that we're going to be talking about is one that I was going to be reading anyway, because I'm reading this series at the moment. Green Lantern 1,000,000, written by Ron Mars, with art by... and Brian Hitch. So Ron Mars and Brian Hitch, with art by Paul Neary and Andy Lanning. So Brian Hitch doesn't normally write Green Lantern. It's usually just Ron Mars, so I'll be interested to see what this one is all about. So let's find out. The adventures of Kyle Rayner in the future. I think. Alright, so Green Lantern 1 million. Kyle Rayner is sent to Uranus, which is the planet that Starman overlooks, specifically to Starman's space station, which I point out looks a lot like Starro. It even has a big orb in the middle that kind of emulates Starro's eye. As far as I know, the station has nothing to do with Starro, at least not in this issue. Maybe later, who knows? Maybe I'm guessing some stuff that gets revealed later. But Kyle enters the space station, and that's where he meets this guy named Bob. His name isn't actually Bob. He's just an alien whose name can't be spoken in English, so he just tells Kyle that he can just call him Bob. Basically, he takes Kyle to his challenge, which is going to be racing an automaton through a Tesseract, like through a bunch of Tesseracts to different planets and stuff, and the person who gets back to the arena first, like to the space station first, wins. Kyle is the only real person here. Everyone is light constructs, including Bob, watching this from the safety of their own home. So, the race begins, and the first place they head is a water planet, where Kyle very quickly learns that the automaton is going to do anything to win, including trying to kill Kyle. So Kyle's like, alright, he wants to play dirty, I'm gonna play dirty. So he creates a giant octopus to keep the automaton busy while Kyle continues racing through other planets. The automaton catches up to him, but Kyle manages to lose him by creating a bridge that the automaton smacks into. And Kyle eventually makes it back to the space station, and the automaton disappears. And, it just crumbles apart and disintegrates, which confuses Kyle for obvious reasons, because that wasn't supposed to happen. But when Kyle gets back to the space station, he figures out why. It's because the power at the space station has been turned off. And it's turned off because of Solaris. Solaris is cheating and trying to ruin Kyle's challenge like he did with Superman. When Kyle gets back to the space station, because the power is off, nothing is keeping any of Starman, because Starman has a whole bunch of criminals and dangerous creatures locked away in his space station, and with the power off, they're free to roam around. So they start swarming Kyle, and Kyle uses his ring to separate all of them in their own little spheres and keep them contained. And then he heads off to find, the battery of the space station. And he uses his ring to turn the power of the station back on. And when he turns it back on, he finds Starman's, communication grid or, computer grid. So it intrigues him. Kyle's a nosy dude, so he goes over to have a look. And when he gets there, he sees a message that was sent to Starman from Solaris. It is at this point that Kyle finds out that Starman is a traitor and that he's working with Solaris. And so Kyle decides to head off because he needs to find his Justice League friends and tell them that Starman is a traitor and that he's working with Solaris. And Solaris knows that Kyle has found out the plan, so he goes and finds Kyle. Kyle tries to fight Solaris, but Solaris is way too powerful and just hits Kyle and beats him immediately. Just incinerates him, with fire. Kyle survives, but he's really badly hurt. Floating through space, Kyle falls into the atmosphere of Mars and crashes into the deserts of Mars, where he is caught by two giant hands that morph out of the sands of Mars, catching him and placing him on the ground. And a mysterious voice says to Kyle, "Don't worry, you're safe and in good hands." Get it? Because he got caught by some giant hands. And we won't find out what happens to Kyle until we get to Martian Manhunter issue 1 million. However, that is not the next tie-in that we're going to be reading. Because like I said, I'm reading them in the order that the Omnibus gives me, because I don't want to have to flick through the whole thing and do it in the recommended reading order online, because there's 5 different reading orders. So we're just doing how the Omnibus does it. And the next tie-in that the Omnibus has is Power of Shazam, issue 1 million. And it's funny because Captain Marvel on the cover of this is looking a lot like the Wizard Shazam. He's got long white hair and a long white beard. I'd be interested to see what... I think this is written by Jerry Ordway, right? Yeah, it's written by Jerry Ordway with art by Dick Giordano and Jerry Ordway. Yeah, Jerry Ordway usually tends to do a pretty good job at playing ball with events, so I wouldn't be surprised if he really he really went into this. Also, like, DC 1 million is all about the future. Who wouldn't want to do a tie-in that's all about, like, exploring a character's far future in, you know, the 853rd century? That sounds sick. So yeah, let's get into Power Shazam issue 1 million. Okay, so Shazam 1 million begins with a woman from the future known as Sutra, who arrives in the wizard's, the Rock of Eternity, which is where the wizard normally sits in their throne and watches over time and stuff. This is the 853rd century, so Shazam, the wizard that we know, is long dead, and the new wizard is Billy Batson, Captain Marvel, so he is the wizard now. And he just sits on the throne, and he is just in a state of suspended animation where he's just asleep forever. It's actually also noted in this that he has no memory of who he is. He's suffering from amnesia because he's been living for so long that he's just forgotten everything. So Sutra sees where she's landed, and that she's, you know, landed in this place that's really historical and significant. And she comes from this place in Mercury known as the Domed Cities, where they have these things called data dynamos, which process information, and information is like money to them. So when she lands in Captain Marvel's, like when she lands in the Rock of Eternity, she sees this information and believes that she can sell it so that her and her son Tanist can get out of poverty because they're really poor. So she heads off to sell this information to go and tell somebody about it. And then this guy named Prospero, who is the villain of this story, shows up. He's just a really rich punk who basically just comes to the data dynamos in order to flaunt his wealth to the people who suffer from poverty. Basically, he wants to find the place that Sutra has found because he overheard that she'd found something interesting, like a Tesseract that takes you somewhere. So he heads into it, and Tanist grabs him, and they both fall into the Rock of Eternity, where they meet Captain Marvel, and Prospero cuts off Captain Marvel, like, some of his beard, because he's got a really long beard and hair, and they see the lightning bolt on his chest, but they don't know it's Captain Marvel. They think that he's the Flash. And then Captain Marvel wakes up, and Prospero tries to kill Tanist and Captain Marvel so that he can use the Rock of Eternity for his own ends. And Billy saves Tanist and tries to get Prospero to help him help Tanist, but Prospero orders Captain Marvel to help him turn the Rock of Eternity into a into like a fairground, like a an attraction is the word I'm thinking of. And I don't know how he does it, but he somehow lets everybody know, like everybody on Mercury, know about the Tesseract and the Rock of Eternity. So they all start swarming and entering the Tesseract, and they all start entering the Rock of Eternity. And, Sutra gets caught in the crowd, and she gets trampled by them. And, yeah, so all these people enter the Rock of Eternity, and Captain Marvel's just like, oh, crap, more people entering the Rock of Eternity. And so Billy tries to, get them out of the Rock of Eternity, because he's like, I don't want you here. and they take Billy's aggression as a challenge to fight him. And so they all start fighting Billy because everyone in the future has superpowers, so they can all fight him. Meanwhile, Prospero just watches from a distance, but he doesn't want them to kill Captain Marvel because Captain Marvel will help sell the attraction that he's trying to build. Like, he's a part of it. So Billy eventually just has enough, and he's like, I'm done fighting these people. They're not gonna leave, so I'm just gonna grab Tannis and we're gonna get the heck out of here. So they fly out of the Rock of... they enter the Tesseract, they get out of the Rock of Eternity to the Domed City, and that's where Tannis finds out that his mother, Sutra, was trampled to death. I was reading this and I was like, oh my god, that's messed up. So yeah, she got trampled to death. And Billy decides that they need to find a different way to get everybody out of the Rock of Eternity, and they might need extra help. He also decides that Tannis deserves the power of Shazam, and because Billy is the wizard now, he has the ability to pass it on to whoever he wants. So he makes Tannis the Captain Marvel of the 853rd century, and he tells Tannis to start calling him the wizard from now on, because if he says the word Captain Marvel, he'll turn back to normal, because Captain Marvel is now the word that you have to say in order to transform. And so Billy and Tannis decide to head off to try and find a way to get everyone out of the Rock of Eternity and make everything the way it should be. And in order to do that, Tannis says that they should go and find the Prime Flash, who should be in the future right now doing his challenge, and he might be able to help them. So they head off to go and find Wally West, and we'll find out what happens to them in the Flash issue 1 million. But that's not the next tie-in that we're going to be talking about. The next tie-in that we're going to be talking about is Young Justice issue 1 million, written by Peter David, with art by Todd Nork and Larry Stucker. Todd Nork being one of my favorite artists. Love his art. And I have been reading Young Justice as well, so I should be able to explain anything that needs being explained if there's any like Young Justice lore in this or anything. So yeah, let's get straight into Young Justice 1 million, which should be real good. So Young Justice 1 million is funny because not only is it really weird, but also nothing actually happens in it. Not really. The entire issue is the future versions of Superboy, Robin, and Impulse. In the future, Superboy it's his millionth clone. Like, this is basically just a parody of DC 1 million. Like, this is Chuck Dixon making fun of DC 1 million. Because Superboy is Superboy's 1 millionth clone. Robin is called Robin the Toy Wonder, and he's like a robot with the original personality of Robin installed in him, but he's designed to look like Dick Grayson, so I don't know if he's supposed to be Dick or Tim or an amalgamation of both. And then Impulse is probably the most interesting idea, but we don't actually get to go into it and explore it. But in the far future, Impulse is said to be the memories of, like, the thoughts of a bunch of speedsters from the Speed Force having joined together, gained consciousness, and they become the future version of Impulse. So the future version of Impulse is just all the speedsters' thoughts in a single body. So it turns out that Young Justice S, or Young Justice Legion S, as they're known in the future, have found a member of Young Justice from the 20th century, and they believe that if they thaw this person out, that they'll be able to, that 20th century Young Justice member will be able to go and say hey to Superman when he returns, because that's the whole thing with DC 1 million, is that Superman's going to be coming back to life in the 853rd century to say hello and make his grand return. But the thing is that we actually don't know who this member is. It's kept a mystery throughout the whole issue, and so what they spend their time doing, what the future members of Young Justice spend their entire time doing, is recounting DC events, but recounting them wrong. And each one is actually drawn by a different artist. Let me just go back. I want to go back and just... So, yeah, the first story, which is Doomsday, which is future Superboy's recounting of the Doomsday event. This was drawn by Angel Unzueta and Norm Rapmond. And basically, he recounts that Superman fought Doomsday and he died, and then Superboy beat Doomsday's ass and was so powerful that he started moving the Daily Planet itself, and Doomsday was just hurtling into space helplessly, and like that was his recount of the Doomsday event, was that Superboy beat Doomsday and saved everyone and was the greatest person ever. And Robin the Toy Wonder is like, that's not what happened. Like, you're just making up the events to make yourself sound better, because that's what Superboy does, is Superboy just boasts and makes himself feel better and stuff. And so Superboy's like, oh, what about you, Robin? Do you remember any events? Like, and he's like, yeah, I remember one. It was the final night. The final night part of this issue is drawn by Craig Rousseau and Sean Parsons. And in this one, Robin the Toy Wonder recounts what happened, or what he thinks happened on Final Night. This one's really cool because the way it's drawn is similar to the DCAU. Like, Batman and Robin just straight up look like the new Batman Adventures versions of those characters. So he basically recounts that he and Batman on the final night were fighting against the Sun Eater, who was eating the sun. So they were running around Gotham saving people. And then he recounts that, and this didn't happen, but in the final night, according to Robin the Toy Wonder, everyone lost their powers and started falling out of the sky. Batman fell over and he broke his back. Like, that just happens. He slips over and he breaks his back. And so Robin has to carry Batman around, and he beats up a bunch of guys, and then he has a go at all the heroes, because the heroes are complaining that they have no powers, and Robin is like, gets really angry and is like, he says that the heroes say that, like, this is our 0 hour, and then Robin's just like, and I'm not joking, this is what happens. Robin is just like, no, it's not over until we say it's over. We can solve this, we can still make this work, we can still save the day. Now is no time to choke. And then Superman hears the word choke, and then that gives the superheroes the strength they need, and they get their powers back, and they fly into space, and they beat up the Sun Eater. And then Dr. Fate shows, like, they beat up the Sun Eater, and the Sun Eater baths up the sun. And then Dr. Fate sends the Sun Eater to another dimension where there's nothing but a sun. And then the Sun Eater eats the sun in that dimension, and then ends up just in total pitch blackness. And so that's Robin's recounting of Final Night. Like I said, this issue, really weird. I'm not even, like, really skipping much. Like, that's just what happens. Batman just randomly breaks his back. And then Impulse talks about what I think is he's supposed to be recounting Millennium, I think. But it's nothing to do with Millennium. Like, the other two events at least kind of resemble their events. But this Millennium one is drawn by Roberto Flores and Wayne Faucher. First of all, Young Justice didn't even exist when Millennium happened. And second of all, his recounting of what happened in Millennium is that Young Justice were just going around in their little supercar, whatever it's called, and a giant egg falls out of the sky, and they all get covered in yolk. And then the Millennium Chicken shows up, and he's basically just a chicken with ninja garb and size. And that's when Superboy is just like, it wasn't a Millennium Chicken, that's ridiculous. Everyone knows it's the Millennium Cow. And Robin the Toy Wonder is like, actually, it was a Millennium Deer. And then Impulse is like, whatever, I want to see who this person is from the 20th century, like, which Young Justice member it is. They start fighting over the controls to thaw them out, and they mess with the controls so much that the test tube explodes, and they accidentally incinerate whoever was in the test tube, so we don't get to see which Young Justice member it was. And canonically, unless this future is no longer canon anymore, Young Justice in the future killed somebody from Young Justice. And then they're just like, oh well, I guess we'll never find out who that was. And it probably didn't matter anyway. They were probably a Young Justice member that just doesn't really matter. They were probably just Lagoon Boy or something, like, who cares? And that's it. That's the whole issue. That's what happens. Young Justice accidentally kill one of their past relatives. Like I said, like, this tie-in was really weird, but it fits in really well with the Young Justice series that was going on at the time, which is, I wouldn't say it's a parody of DC, but it definitely has parody-like elements to it. I always described it as kind of being like it's like the closest thing DC has ever had to, like, a sitcom, you know? It's like Malcolm in the Middle, but with superheroes. That's what Young Justice was like when I was reading it. I was like, this is very goofy, but it has, like, serious moments in it, too. So yeah, that's the end of the Young Justice 1 million tie-in. And the next issue that we're going to be reading is DC 1 million, issue 2. Specifically, the chapter of this issue is called The Day After Tomorrow. So let's get straight into this and see what happens next in the actual event. So DC 1 million issue 2, in Grant Morrison fashion, there's a lot of future time travel and stuff all in this, and so it can be a bit confusing, so I'm going to try and explain it the best that I can. So at the end of the last issue, Vandal Savage stole all the Rocket Red suits, and he also killed Aqualad, Garth, or Tempest as he's known as now. It's revealed in this issue that he killed Tempest. I didn't know that, but yeah, in this one he killed him. It's revealed. And he kidnapped Roy Harper and is holding him hostage. And immediately after he does that, not only does the Hourman virus get set free from Hourman and starts infecting the planet, but also Vandal Savage turns the red rocket suits into nuclear missiles and tries to blast, pretty sure it's New York that he tries to go for, but he ends up hitting Montevideo instead, or Montevideo, if that's how you pronounce it. He ends up hitting that place instead because they got set off course by the American government, I'm pretty sure. Somebody hacked into them trying to stop them, and they ended up hitting this place instead, destroying the entire country, killing millions of people, at least 1 million people. Remember at the beginning of the last issue where we saw Manhunter holding a body? That's now happened. We're at that moment now. So Blue Beetle is in his bug, flying around, getting data on the situation. He sees the Justice Legion A, and right now they think that the Justice Legion A are enemies. And it also doesn't help that they're infected by the virus, and what the virus does is it tends to push people to more of like a reckless and anger-driven state, so they're more likely to be more brutish and like fight and get angry and stuff much more easily. So when they see the Justice Legion A, because they're affected by the virus, Firestorm and the Ray, who are in Montevideo as well, scouring the area and trying to take care of the situation, they start fighting Justice Legion A, thinking that they were responsible for this. Meanwhile, Steel, Big Barda, and Plastic Man are some of the only people on the planet who haven't been infected by the virus. Steel wants to go down to Earth to make sure that his family is okay, but Plastic Man and Big Barda won't let him go because they need to try and find a way to find the Justice League and get them from the 853rd century back to the present. But there's a problem because even though the Justice League are apparently in the future, there are some characters, specifically Wave Rider, who is in the headquarters of the Guardians at the end of time. He is getting like information that tells him that Superman, who is supposed to be alive in the 853rd century, according to him, he's been getting information that Superman dies in the 21st century, killed by something known as Gog. Now, we don't really get any kind of answers as to what this means. We'll find out eventually, I'm guessing. Like, I'm pretty sure Grant Morrison is going to explain what Wave Rider is talking about. But yeah, apparently, in the 21st century, Superman is going to be killed by something called Gog, even though right now he's in the future. So maybe at some point he ends up coming back in time, and then he dies. I guess we'll have to find out. Meanwhile, the Atom goes and visits Oracle because he wants to help Oracle figure out what this virus is so they can come up with a cure. So he enters Oracle's body in like at the molecular level, and he sees the virus inside her. And he's like, Oracle, I'm down at the cellular level. I can see the structures attacking your lymphocytes. This virus is some kind of advanced molecular machine. We have our work cut out. Eventually, Martian Manhunter comes in and stops Firestorm and the Ray from fighting the Justice Legion A. And then General Eiling says that he has a group that he calls the Ultramarine Corps unit that he's going to use in the absence of the JLA. So they'll be able to protect the Earth while the JLA are gone and kind of help with this whole situation. But then he gets interrupted by Vandal Savage, the present Vandal Savage, not the future version. He comes on the TV and he says, I'm the one responsible for everything. I wasn't supposed to hit Montevideo. I was supposed to hit New York, but you got in my way and I ended up destroying a different country. And basically, I'm going to keep sending missiles and destroying countries until you give me all of your armed weaponry. And as soon as my face is on your currency, this isn't going to end. But what he doesn't tell them is that they're not actually missiles, they are red rocket suits. And the red rocket suits have remote-controlled offensive capabilities as well. So if they try to stop them from crashing into the planet, the red rocket suits will be able to fight back. And after he's done his little broadcast, Roy Harper tries to attack Vandal Savage, and he gets knocked out. Meanwhile, the Justice Legion A decide to head off to try and find a way to save their counterparts that are stuck in the future. But yeah, Roy Harper. Damn. There's a lot of characters in this. Roy Harper attacks Vandal Savage, and he gets knocked the crap out. And then he gets electrocuted. He's really pissed off because Garth has died. And then Vandal Savage puts Roy in a red rocket suit and launches him in the suit. And so it ends with Roy being launched away in a red rocket suit as a suicide bomber. And so, yeah, he's going to possibly crash land in a country and explode, killing more people. So yeah, that's the big reveal, that Vandal Savage isn't just sending rocket reds out to destroy countries, but there's people in them too. Other superheroes and stuff. And that's where it ends. It ends with Roy Harper being sent out in a red rocket suit, screaming for his life, because he's probably going to die. But is he going to die? We're going to have to find out, probably in DC 1 Million issue 3. But that's not the next issue that we're going to be talking about. The next issue that we're going to be talking about is Batman 1 Million. Written by Doug Mensch, with art by Yvel Guichet, Yvel Guichet, I'm guessing is how it's pronounced, and Sal Buscema. Alright, Batman 1 million. I'm a little conflicted on this one because it does some fun stuff with the future stuff. We get to see some Batman villains reimagined in the future, like what their future counterparts are, which is a lot of fun. But we also get some really confusing stuff in regards to Bruce Wayne after being sent to the future, which we'll see in a moment. And also, there's some conflicting things with Robin the Toy Wonder. Robin the Toy Wonder appears in this issue, and it is abundantly clear that Doug Mensch and Peter David didn't communicate at all, even though they both wrote Robin the Toy Wonder. In fact, Peter David created Robin the Toy Wonder. I'm pretty sure. He created Robin the Toy Wonder, and then Doug Mensch had to use Robin the Toy Wonder in his issue because he was doing an issue that took place in the future Batman's Batcave, and Robin the Toy Wonder is a part of that mythos, so he had to use him. But they didn't communicate with each other. He didn't ask Peter David, what is Robin the Toy Wonder? He just decided to come up with what he thought Robin the Toy Wonder was. I'll explain it in a bit when we get to it, but Bruce Wayne wakes up in the future on Pluto, which is the planet that future Batman lives in. And when he wakes up, he immediately meets Robin the Toy Wonder. And Robin the Toy Wonder explains to Batman what is probably one of the most confusing and bizarre decisions in this entire event. Let's see if I can explain this. So, remember when future Batman took Bruce Wayne's spirit and sucked it into a device? Well, at the end of DC 1 million issue 1, when Batman was sent into the future with the other members of the Justice League, I assumed that he was sent with his own body, because you see him with the other members when they get sent into the future. But that's not the case. It was just his spirit that was sent into the future, and Robin the Toy Wonder explains to Bruce Wayne, because when Bruce Wayne wakes up in the future, he says that he feels like himself, but his body doesn't feel the same. And Robin the Toy Wonder explains to Bruce that it's not his own body that he's currently in. He is in a clone body of the future Batman, but he's not wearing future Batman's costume. Future Batman made a copy of Bruce Wayne's costume that he could wear. So he looks exactly like present-day Batman, but his body is a clone of the future Batman. So it's really confusing for absolutely no reason. I read it and I was like, why is this so confusing? Why did we take this route? What the hell? This doesn't even affect anything. It's just oh, Bruce isn't in his own body, but he just looks like Bruce Wayne anyway, so why even do that? He doesn't even look different. It just felt like a really overcomplicated thing that didn't need to happen. If Bruce had just shown up in the future in his own body, I wouldn't have questioned anything. It would have been fine. But it felt like the writers were overthinking things, and they were oh, there's gonna be readers who are gonna be well, didn't Bruce get a spirit taken out of his body? Why does he have a body in the future? It's I don't think any readers were thinking that when they read this, so I don't think it was necessary that you had to create an explanation as to why Bruce has a body in the future. I don't know. So yeah, Bruce is on Pluto in the future with Robin the Toy Wonder. Robin the Toy Wonder explains to Bruce that Pluto has been turned into a prison where they hold all of future Batman's villains. It is essentially the Arkham Asylum of the future. It's just a giant planet. And there's a Tesseract in the middle that will take them straight to the Batcave. Then Batman comes across his challenge, which is to get to a ledge, but a bunch of things are going to be shooting at him. So he starts doing his challenge, and things are shooting at him, and he's just hopping his way along. And then stuff starts malfunctioning, and Robin the Toy Wonder reveals that there's a virus that's been surging throughout all of the planets at the same time that is messing with everyone's challenges. We know that Solaris is responsible. I don't know if Doug Mensch knew that Solaris was responsible, because he doesn't say that it's Solaris in this, but we know it's Solaris. It's messing things up. So Robin the Toy Wonder is like, well, I guess your challenge is over. We gotta get you to the Justice Legion headquarters so that you can meet up with your friends and try and stop this chaos that's currently going on. And so they start flying their way to the Batcave, because there's apparently a Tesseract that will take them directly to the Justice Legion headquarters. And while they're on their way there, a bunch of... And also, Robin the Toy Wonder mentions that he has an ally that there's a prisoner in the asylum that they're hoping to meet that will help them be a good ally. We'll find out who that is later. But on their way there, they come across a bunch of... We get to see some of the future Batman villains, because they get in their way, trying to stop Batman and Toy Wonder from getting to where they need to go. We get to see Metaclay, which is basically just a future version of Clayface. He looks exactly like Clayface, probably the least interesting one. We see Riddle City. So in the future, Riddler isn't a person. They're a giant city made out of puzzle pieces. And the previous Batman pulled the city apart, but apparently it rebuilt itself, which is cool. I think that's a really cool idea. A lot of these villains are really cool ideas, and I'm afraid we're never going to see them again. You got Dice God, which is a six-faced dice-like being, so that's kind of like supposed to be the future version of Two-Face. It's like a big dice with different faces on each side that each have a different personality, which is really fun. And then, surprisingly, the Joker's future counterpart is the one that we get the least amount of time with, and that's the Laughter, which I guess, what was his name? Like Xanon, or yeah, was it Xanon or something? The guy that was future Batman's arch nemesis. I thought he was supposed to be the future version of Batman, of the Joker, but I guess not. I guess it's supposed to be this guy called the Laughter, who looks exactly like the Joker, except he's in a giant pair of teeth with robotic legs and arms. I don't know. I guess Doug Mensch didn't know that Alan Grant had already created a Joker-like arch-nemesis for future Batman. Either way, it's during this whole chase scene that we have with, Batman and Toy Wonder running away from all these villains that we get the explanation for Robin the Toy Wonder in this future, or specifically in this issue, because it's different to Peter David's explanation. So in the Young Justice tie-in, in Young Justice 1 Million, Peter David explained that Robin the Toy Wonder is a robot with the personality of Robin installed into it. But in this, Doug Mensch explains that Robin the Toy Wonder is a robot with the personality of the child version of future Batman installed into it. So not Robin. It's future Batman's childhood innocence put into a robot. And that became Robin the Toy Wonder. So two very different things. So that is your proof that, Peter David and Doug Mensch did not talk to one another. Doug Mensch's idea is pretty cool, but, it just completely goes against, is this supposed to be just a different Robin the Toy... Are there two Robin the Toy Wonders? Are there multiple Robin the Toy Wonders, just like there are multiple Robins? There's a Dick Grayson one, and this is the Jason Todd one. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Robin the Toy Wonder and Batman enter through the Tesseract. They don't get to where they need to go because they're traveling through the Tesseract. It gets messed up, so they don't quite get to where they needed. And the villains actually follow them through the Tesseract. So they're like, crap, we're in trouble. And that's when Robin the Toy Wonder's ally shows up, and it's Catwoman, specifically the future Catwoman. And she shows up, and she's like, he's like, so, you need help, Toy Wonder? And Toy Wonder's like, Catwoman, it's about time. And Catwoman's like, maybe so, Junior, but what's in it for me? And it ends there. That's the end of Batman 1 Million tie-in. And so the next tie-in we're going to be talking about is Catwoman 1 Million. Because at this point in time, Catwoman had her own series going on. So she's got her own DC 1 million tie-in. So we're about to see exactly what happened at the end of that last tie-in in this one. Catwoman 1 million is written by Jim Balent, and it's written and drawn by Jim Balent with dialogue by Devin Grayson, and and art by John Staniski as well. So yeah, let's see what happens in this one. Okay, so Catwoman 1 million, which is going to be the final tie-in that we talk about on this episode. Catwoman is going to, the future Catwoman is going to help Batman and Robin the Toy Wonder get into the Batcave so that Batman can access what is called the Boom Suit, which is a type of Batman suit that is said to be able to help him get to the Justice League, the Justice Legion headquarters, so that he can meet the rest of the Justice League. We don't know how. Apparently he just needs this boom suit in order to get there. So, because this is a Catwoman tie-in, she decides that, Catwoman's the one that has to go and infiltrate all of, the Batcave's systems and stuff in order to get in there, while Batman and Robin the Toy Wonder try to hold off the Laugher, who is the Joker. I thought it was the Laughter, but no, his name is the Laugher. We never learn anything about this Catwoman, which is really disappointing. She's just Catwoman. We don't learn her real name. We never get to see what she looks like, other than, she's just got, basically, just imagine Catwoman's costume, but if it had, metal bits on, the arms and legs, and then had, giant metal tendrils coming out of the back of her head. That's what she looks like. So, she runs into the area, and then, an automated, Batman's, automated security system turns on, and so this flying, how would I explain it? It's like a drone starts chasing after her and shooting after her. She pulls the gun out of nowhere and starts shooting at it, because this Catwoman uses laser guns, because the future. And then as she continues running through the cave, she comes across a bunch of escaped criminals and convicts, and they all start chasing after her. And then a giant flying ship that is a part of the protection program of the Batcave appears, and she knows that it senses movement, so she ducks, and the ship shoots its lasers at all of the convicts, taking them out for her. She then, in order to get away from the ship that is shooting at her, cuts a laser, because she has a laser in her wrist gauntlet. She cuts a hole in the ground with the laser and heads through. And when she gets through, she hears a noise behind her. She pulls her gun out, and she finds a young woman, who you would assume would be the future Harley Quinn or something, because she looks like Harleen Quinzel. But she's not the future Harley Quinn. She's actually the future ventriloquist, and she tries to kill Catwoman, because she's like, oh, you're here, you're trying to escape, aren't you? I'll follow you. And Catwoman's like, nah, you're a criminal. How'd you even end up in here? And she's just like, I had a little problem with puppets in the past, but I'm much better now. And she has this weird giant metal claw in the back of her spine, which she goes to stab Catwoman with, but she gets zapped from behind by a security robot. And so Catwoman fights this security robot, and that's where she draws out she calls it her energy whip, and it can create sparks out of the front of it, which is kind of cool, out of the tip. So she uses that to take down the security robot. But then, she heavily damages it, and then it grabs her in its, metal tendrils. And so she activates this thing on her neck, which she calls her Sonic Trachea Blast, and blasts the robot apart with a big sonic pulse. But the shrapnel destroys her equipment. She hitches a ride on a nearby security drone, which is flying past her. She jumps onto it, and then uses this thing that she calls a control disc to interface with it and take control of it so that she can fly it throughout the Batcave. And she eventually comes to the door that will allow her into the Batcave, or like into where the Batcomputer is. She tries hacking into it, and it won't let her in because it's just too good. So she tries to trick it into thinking that there are danger zone plasma levels building up in the cave in hopes that it will trigger the vents so that she can get through. But she stays hacked into the system for too long, and it electrocutes her. So after being electrocuted, the vent's still open, so she flies through the vent. And because she's just been electrocuted, she passes out, or she's gonna pass out. And she's like, no, don't pass out. Gotta keep going. I can't stop now. Meanwhile, Batman and Robin Toy Wonder are having a hard time keeping the Laugher preoccupied. They're like, oh man, I hope she succeeds. You know, I hope she's as good as the Catwoman I know. Batman also talks about the fact that he doesn't like the fact that the Laugher, like the Joker's legacy has lived on in the future. Like, he's like, oh, that sucks that the Joker's legacy has continued. Future Catwoman finds a room full of lasers, and she throws a bunch of robotic mice, which set off all the lasers, allowing her to make her way through the room, until she finally makes it to the Batcomputer, where she finds the boom suit, and she hacks into the Batcomputer, and allows Batman and Robin the Toy Wonder to enter. And when Batman gets there, he's like, wow, I'm surprised you didn't betray us by, like, taking the shuttle. And she's like, the thought did cross my mind, but after all is said and done... And then she kisses Batman, because Catwoman, no matter what version of Catwoman is, she always has to be in love with Batman. It's like, I am only human. Boom suits in the ISO tube behind you. Good luck. And she makes her escape. And, so yeah, Catwoman makes her escape. She gets onto her ship. She finds a bunch of slime on the door, and she's like, oh well. And then, like, sets off. And as she's about to set off, or as she sets off, in the ship, which is just the Batwing, the Killer Croc of the future appears behind her, and he's really gross and disgusting looking. She's like, Killer Croc? You gotta be kidding me. Enter password slime ball, and then she, like, uses her, like, metal claws to kill Killer Croc, and she's like, password denied. See you in my nightmares, Pluto. Not that I plan on sleeping for a while yet. Look out, universe, here I come. And she flies off to do whatever she wants to do. And that's the end of the Catwoman tie-in. Catwoman 1 million. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It was really fun. It was just a fun little heist issue of future Catwoman. The only disappointing thing is that we learned nothing about her. There is nothing differing her, like, other than her technology. There is no way to differentiate her from the actual Catwoman. Like, we don't know her name, we don't know... It's just like the future Batman. We know nothing about them other than, like... The only thing we know about future Batman is his origin. We know nothing about future Catwoman. Is she a descendant of Selina Kyle? Probably. I guess we'll never find out. Unless she appears in DC 1 million for some reason, who knows. Maybe she'll appear in a later tie-in. I think there is a... I think there might be another... I think there's a Detective Comics tie-in that we haven't read yet, so maybe she'll show up in that. But yeah, that's actually going to be it for this episode. That's the end of this episode of DC 1 Million, end of part 1. Next week, we're going to be doing part 2 of DC 1 Million, where we'll be just continuing, reading some more tie-ins and some more main issues. I'm planning on spreading this out over 4 weeks, doing 4 parts. So yeah, I hope to see you next week for the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this one, and yeah, I'm enjoying DC 1 Million so far. I think it's fun. You know, so far the tie-ins haven't been too bad. So far the tie-ins have been, like, it helps that it's all futuristic and stuff. It'd be really hard to make you'd have to really try to make a tie-in not be interesting when it's all about the future, because future stuff is always fun. Just coming up with, like... Because when you're doing stuff about the future, it's like, We don't know what the future is like, so you can just make up whatever you want. You don't have to be realistic with it. You can just be like, well, in the future, in this tie-in, everyone gets around in giant test tubes. But yeah, that's going to be it for this episode, and I hope to see you next week for more DC 1 Million. Have a good one.